Donald et al. Lie and Deflect Scandal. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's talk about the huge scandal that the Signal chat is, as well as a few other things. So, CIA Director Ratcliffe, ODNI Director Gabbard, and FBI Director Patel were part of the panel that had to answer questions about this Signal chat. I'm hoping it's the first and not the last hearing. And they effectively kept on saying that there was no classified information that was released, that they didn't take responsibility for who invited a journalist into a Signal chat. They didn't take responsibility that using Signal itself for that conversation was wrong, because they just did not accept the premise that what was being shared was classified information. But when you talk to Jeffrey Goldberg, and now, every channel is going to interview Mr. Goldberg and read the article in The Atlantic, Mr. Goldberg points out that there were timelines and there was information about who they were going to kill. There was information about an active CIA agent, and from who they were going to kill, how they were going to do it, the weapon systems they were using, all of that put together sounds very much like war plans. And still, Tulsi Gabbard and Ratcliffe went on saying that there was no classified information. This puts Mr. Goldberg in a very difficult position. I would want Mr. Goldberg to approach Congress and the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. I know that they're Republican majority, but still, if that information is provided to those committee members, Democratic members will also get to see what's in that chat. And then they should have a hearing with Mr. Goldberg after Mr. Goldberg gives them this information, and ask Mr. Goldberg what he thought. Because what Mr. Goldberg still doesn't know is why he was added to the group. Donald Trump went and answered the question by blaming adding Jeffrey Goldberg to a low-level officer under Mike Waltz, but there is no indication by Mr. Goldberg that anybody other than the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, invited him into that chat group. So this is a huge, huge scandal. Our government is compromised. Our enemies like Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, they now realize how careless, callous, reckless our principal officers are, who take care of our defense and our national security and classified information. And now they are going to employ all of their cyber capacity in compromising the phones of all of these people, if they have not done that already. Because one of the people who was having this chat on Signal was actually in Moscow when this was happening. So we don't know if Russia has already, got that information or not. Security analysts say that, it's very likely that our adversaries have that information and got that information, and now they're going to hack our phones. So all government employees have now essentially been put there have been targets put on them by foreign adversaries who are going to hack their phones, because this Signal chat is not the only chat that these people are having. This just happened to be the one where Jeffrey Goldberg was inadvertently added. And whether there will be any sort of action taken against these people will depend largely on Donald Trump, because they are Donald Trump's principal officers. But the American people and Congress needs to know how compromised our government is. And just this very survey article, without going into specifics, shows that our government is compromised. That the people who are in charge of our national security and our defense don't really care about the ramifications of a security leak like this. So that puts us in a very, very bad positions with our allies, because they're not going to share intel with us anymore. If you think they're going to share high-level intelligence with us, you have not been paying attention. And after talking the way that they did about Europe and how Donald is treating NATO, Europe is not going to stand with the United States on a lot of issues from now. And, I think it's the best for Europe to stand on their own and sort of rebuild their infrastructure. And, they are the sleeping giant at the moment. And if they get together, they're more than enough to take Russia along with Ukraine. They're more than able to ally with Ukraine to defeat Russia and get back the territories that Russia has annexed. So, I think that we are, and I've talked about this in a previous episode, we are coming to a world that's going to become trilateral in terms of regional and global influence, spheres of influence, given the many cuts and to U.S. aid and other programs that Donald Trump's administration has made, along with now compromising our national security. And while Donald Trump's principal officers, confirmed by the Senate, are compromising our government, Elon Musk is in Wisconsin putting millions and millions of dollars in blocking a Democratic Supreme Court justice from being elected in Wisconsin. This has major implications in terms of election and election laws in Wisconsin. And this is a showing of the chief oligarchs saying that I'm going to go and use my money and defeat your vote. So citizens of Wisconsin have to send a huge message to Elon Musk by electing the Democrat to the Supreme Court, because otherwise we are going to just have elections like these that billionaires can, buy. And if it keeps going this way, our republic will die. Because this is an attack on elections. This is an attack on voters. This is an attack on an intimidation of the people, or, feeding their greed because Elon Musk is offering $100 to people who register to vote or vote for not vote for the Democratic nominee. Her name escapes me, so I will not even attempt that. But it's important for people to really focus their attention and share information about this race that's going to happen in Wisconsin, where this billionaire is trying to corrupt the election by infusing millions and millions of dollars in a state. It's going to become the most expensive judicial election in U.S. history. So, at the same time as Elon Musk is going there and compromising elections, Donald Trump drafted an executive order on voting requirement that you have to prove citizenship in order to vote, and preventing mail-in ballots from being counted if they are received after Election Day. As it stands now, states determine that, and states determine when what qualifies as a vote that they will count. In my state, for example, it is if you are postmarked by election day, then your vote is counted, because it depends on, the mail system of when they receive. So the point here is, though, that when there's an executive order that is issued by the president, and that executive order directly contravenes constitutional mandates and laws, then that executive order is by its nature null and void, because it tries to supersede an act of Congress, which the president doesn't have the power to do in cases of statutes, in cases of election statutes, the Count Act, and I think it's Election Count Act, and those laws, as well as the Constitution saying very clearly that states and Congress will have the say on what happens in elections, especially presidential elections. So the president doesn't really have any power whatsoever when it comes to election matters. It may be adopted into a law, this executive order. If it is adopted into a law by Mike Johnson's House and then the Senate and becomes law, that's when the problem will arise, because then the argument will be that this is infringing on our right to vote. That there is no requirement put up by states or by Congress that says that proof of citizenship at the time of vote is necessary, or that your votes won't be counted if they don't get in by election day. As long as they're postmarked by election day, they're okay. That's what it is today. So these procedures of state and Congress cannot be contravened by Donald Trump. The only solution here would be to go to Congress to turn this executive order into law. And I hope that if that happens, Democrats absolutely get in the way and use every single lever, including the vote for cloture, to end debate and vote for the bill. No caving on that is even a feasible idea, because that compromises our right to vote. Few other things, miscellaneous things. As Donald is going about, these executive orders almost every other day, he was on an interview and he talked about a compensation fund for his January 6th, hostages, the ones he calls hostages. So the criminals who were convicted and sentenced for seditious conspiracy and other violent crimes on January 6, 2021, Donald Trump wants a compensation fund to pay these people. So in a very clear, transparent way, if you look at it, what Donald Trump is trying to do right now is pay his insurrectionist foot soldiers so they can start to go on their way to intimidating and harassing people that Donald Trump is targeting on social media, or anybody in MAGA is targeting on social media. People like Jeffrey Goldberg, or if there are people who, like AOC or Jasmine Crockett, instead of Pam Bondi going and threatening now by, wanting to pay Donald Trump's insurrectionist foot soldiers, he wants to be able to do that just by sending out the bullhorn message of targeting these people. That's what I see when I see Donald Trump trying to compensate people he pardoned who fought on his behalf and caused the death of 5 Capitol officers and one of their own, Ashley Babbitt, wants to now pay these people. But cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, that's what we're going to cut, and then pay these insurrectionist foot soldiers? Is that where the parity comes in? Do you not see the blatant disparity of this administration talking about efficiency and not spending more money than and shrinking the size of government, but you're going to do a compensation fund for pardoned criminals? I mean, come on. And obviously, with all of this happening, we still have the tariff thing coming up April 2nd that Donald Trump calls Liberation Day. That's where more tariffs will be announced, tariffs will go into effect, and consumers are seeing that. And the American people in the town halls and on the streets in front of Tesla dealerships are making their voices heard. And if you go on Rachel Maddow's show, every day Rachel Maddow starts her show by showing one of these protests that's happening. Bernie Sanders and AOC are going around the country to red districts and red areas where you can see thousands and thousands of people turning out. Not Democrats, everybody, because they see what's coming. And they see that with these tariffs, we are going to have price of everything go up. Everything from the price of beer to the price of cars will go up. And consumer sentiment has plunged because of that reason. So as we head into the abyss, I want you to be aware of what's happening with our national security, with our domestic policies, and I want you to conserve your resources, save up. I want you to observe the markets and the news. I want you to be restrained in how you approach people who are blatantly inundated by Donald Trump's lies. But I also want you to have the courage to stand up and speak truth to power and protest and call your representatives, call your state senators and representatives, and tell them that this is going to hurt our state. This funding going away from education, this funding going away from NIH, where drugs are being approved by the FDA and the NIH, through NIH research and the CDC. If you don't properly fund those, there's going to be a huge backlash. We're going to lose our competitive advantage. We're not going to be able to meet the demands of the American people. And we need to be aware of what's happening and calling these state senators and representatives and letting them know that what's happening in the federal government is going to come and hurt us. And it's going to do that soon. So what are they going to do about it? And then call your representatives and senators in Congress and tell them that we cannot afford to live without Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid benefits. And the fact that our government is shutting down because is systematically trying to shut down parts of the Social Security Administration quietly goes to show that they are going to one day just come out and say, you're not going to get your checks this month. And that's going to cause a shock to every American, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, whatever you are. If you receive a Social Security check, or if you know somebody who you love, who's part of your family, who lives on their own, but only because they are able to afford things through Social Security, their Social Security safety net. And then their responsibility will fall on the heads of their children and their children's children. And that's going to become a trauma that Americans will have to deal with when the safety net is taken away. So they will lie and deflect about their scandals. They will give you excuses. They will never take responsibility for their actions. And one of the biggest sins in my mind, the original sin of all, is not being able to take responsibility for your actions. If you cannot take responsibility for your actions, you should not be in that position of power and responsibility. So I go back to saying that these people who were on the Signal chat, they need to resign. Our Donald Trump needs to fire at least some of them who were talking about classified information, which we will find out if and when Jeffrey Goldberg turns over this information to the House and Senate committees. With that said, thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.